Hello viewer, and welcome to the Bible journey to the Holiness season. Today we are in the book of Leviticus and the chapter is 17 and a little bit about 16 where we left last time in our previous episode. Of course, with me on this set is our pastor, Pastor John Kabira Wakabira. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you so much.
And we also have Pastor Dan Abuya.
Pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also Pastor Peter Nyaga.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And of course, we want to start with the word of prayer from Pastor Peter Nyaga.
Our gracious Father in heaven, thank you so much once again. Today is yet another day that we need to listen from you. We're asking that you may guide our thoughts and our lips and be with our viewers, Lord, that we can understand. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Amen. Now, our previous topic of study or chapter of Leviticus, that is 16, was quite lengthy and with a lot of details, and we didn't sum up on everything. And that is where we left when the person or the one who had taken away the goat or the Azazel is coming back and he has to clean himself, then he rejoins the camp. And I needed to get your opinions, my dear pastors, especially Pastor Abuya and Pastor Nyaga, because we finished with Pastor Kabira on your final thoughts, especially beginning verse 29. What happens thereafter? Maybe I start with Pastor Abuya.
Right, yeah, and not so much of an opinion, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
sure.
The Word of God puts it very clear that on that day, that is the 10th day of the 7th month, you shall afflict your souls, do no work at all. This is the thought that is being driven, verse 29, 30, 31. It is a holy Sabbath to the Lord. You rest in it. There is no other function that should absorb your attention but this one. So afflicting your souls, in other words, ensuring that by the end of this particular Sabbath worship, you are right with God. So hence, it was a solemn, and sometimes it did fall, later on, for example, we find at the death of Christ, it was a high Sabbath. Like it was a Passover, at the same time falling on the Sabbath day. So a double Sabbath. So it was a high Sabbath, yeah. So that is what, and this was to be a statute forever. In other words, as long as the sacrificial system remained in existence, this was to be carried out. Right.
Pastor Nyaga.
Yeah, I think what I would just say as we transit to chapter 17 is that the occasion was to cleanse the sins of the Israelites. So that was very significant. Cleansing their sins, also cleansing the sins of the sanctuary, and setting them on a new page as they begin a new year. You know that the calendar of the Jews was turning at this particular time. And so they are opening a new year with a new, clean people, starting afresh, and then they wait until the next year again, such a time like this. And so I think we will need to transit to chapter 17 to appreciate the issues of blood, because we have seen already in chapter 16 that blood is key in cleansing and purifying. I think there were two things that we have seen consistently used in purifying and cleansing: water and blood. And we'll appreciate more when we come to the New Testament, when we get the introduction of the baptism, again, which is about the water and the Spirit, and of course from Jesus Christ. So this is what it's playing here, that's forgiveness of sin. And these two things are very, very important. But basically, I think we conclude chapter 16 by saying the atonement day, this great day, was the day when the sin was removed from the camp of Israel.
And now, Pastor Kabira, even as we
maybe just to add a little reference here and there for our viewers to be able to follow up, to go back to Hebrews chapter 9. That is where the entire service is done and the symbolism that is there. And more especially from verse 23 to 28, sorry, it's where we can be able to do that. Because of time, I don't want to do that. Maybe also good to be able to let our viewers also be able to differentiate between the daily versus the yearly sacrifice.
Right.
Whereas the daily ritual was done in the first room, that is the outer court, The yearly one was majorly done in the second room going on to the most holy place. The daily one was for many priests, but the yearly one, this is the Day of Atonement, was only done by the high priest alone. There were so many daily sacrifices, but during the year, this was just one major sacrifice that was done. And of course, the daily ritual, or rather daily sacrifices, had no access to the immediate presence of God, vis-a-vis the yearly ritual of the Day of Atonement, where access through sacrifice to the presence of God, and of course purification entirely of sin. I just wanted to add that as a little bit.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. And so blood has been very important in fact, God has mentioned it severally, that the life of any animal, of a human being, is in the blood. And therefore, this is something that is very crucial, and we really need to be serious, or to regard it very sacred or seriously, because it's very important. And now in chapter 17 is all about the sanctity of
that
blood. Yeah, the sanctity of that blood. And now when you start verse 1 and 2, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Aaron and to his sons and to all the children of Israel, and say to them, this is the thing which the Lord has commanded, saying, whatever man of the house of Israel who kills an ox or lamb or goat in the camp, or who kills it outside the camp, and does not bring it to the door of the tabernacle of meeting to offer an offering to the Lord before the tabernacle of the Lord, the guilt of bloodshed shall be imputed to that man. He has shed blood, and that man shall be cut off from among his people. To the end of that, the children of Israel may bring their sacrifices, which they offer in the open field, that they may bring them to the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, to the priest, and offer them as peace offering to the Lord. Is it that there were other sacrifices that they would offer out there, then they bring to the Lord? What's happening, especially, verse 3 and 4?
Yeah, this is a very important aspect, and before this, allow me to give just a sweeping comment. We're calling this the Holiness season, and it is exactly these chapters now, from chapter 17 to 26. This is now actually, it's what is called the Holiness Code, because all these instructions they have been given from behind, now they start living a holy life. In practice, we are going to start seeing these things, the things they do in their lifestyle. So it is called the Holiness Code. Now, the question that you pose can be properly answered when you finish reading that pericope until 7.
Until 7.
Right, yeah.
So I continue 6 and 7.
It's one passage, actually.
6 says, and the priest shall sprinkle the blood on the altar of the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and burn the fat for a sweet aroma to the Lord. They shall no more offer their sacrifices to demons, after whom they have played the harlot. This shall be a statute forever for them throughout their generations.
The children of Israel are coming from Egypt. By the way, remember, how long is it since they left Egypt? It's about 1 year, 1 month. Remember, we finished 1 year. And now the foot of the mountain where instructions were being given about the tabernacle, it is like a month.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is actually a short time. So he's telling them, what? You have been playing the harlot, offering your sacrifices to what? To demons. So he's referring to their former practices in Egypt. And there was a lot of sacrifices being offered in Egypt, and then the surrounding nations. So it's not like this is a very strange phenomena to them. It's just that it is being done in a different way, in God's way, in God's own style, because now it's about him. If you read 2 Chronicles chapter 11, verse 15, I've put my thumb there, talking about King Rehoboam and the idolatry that went on in Jerusalem later on. The Levites left their common lands, they left their possessions, came to Judah and Jerusalem, for Jeroboam and his sons had rejected them from serving as priests to the Lord. Then he appointed, you see what the king did. This is after the rebellion,
Yeah.
Then he appointed for himself priests for the high places, for the demons, and the calf idols which he had made. It is something they had been doing before. It is something later on, after they depart from the instructions of the Lord, they are going to do. So this warning is coming in that particular context. Where do you offer the sacrifices? If you are spilling blood in the name of sacrifice, where is it going to be done?
Should be done in the temple.
It should be done in the tabernacle. You cannot erect, you cannot erect your altar out there and purport to have, performed a sacrifice or offered an offering there. So there was a place, there was a time, and there was a person who is responsible for that. As in contradiction with the people, the pagan nations, where, basically almost everybody was a god. And that's a concept we have in a modern day, worldview, where is it everybody is a god. Have you heard this? The postmodern, this enlightenment. You have a god, You can offer a sacrifice. You just set an altar there in your house or out there and do it here. So,
Actually, God appears to be a contradiction in verse number 4. It is well explained in verse number 5.
Yeah.
Maybe if we read verse number 3, then I can come to verse number 5. Whatever man of the house of Israel who kills an ox or lamb or goat in the camp, or who kills it outside the camp, it does not bring it to the door of the tabernacle of meeting to offer an offering to the Lord before the tabernacle of the Lord, the guilty of the blood shed shall be imputed to that man. He has shed blood, and that man shall be cut off from among his people. But verse number 5, to the end that the children of Israel may bring their sacrifices, which they offer in the open field. And I wanted to underline offering in the open field. This was a common practice. And this is what God is correcting. He's telling them, no, and this is what we've been doing. But now we have put in place a system of sacrifice. We have inaugurated the priest. We have told them what to do. You have witnessed even the Day of Atonement. Now, I want you to know from today henceforth, you're not supposed to sacrifice the open places. Please, whoever who has an offering that he wants to do, he goes ahead to say that they may bring them to the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, to the priest. So that now, there's no another person who is now authorized to carry on the sacrifices apart from who? The priest. Before, they would sacrifice on their own. Anywhere they wanted, how they would feel. But now God is telling them, not anymore. In a sacrifice must be done in the temple and by the priest.
By the priest, You remember in John 4, when God meets the Samaritan woman. Later on, when the breakaway happens, Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, and Jeroboam, when they part, what did Jeroboam do? He set up another altar in the northern kingdom. Samaria. Remember that is where you get the context of the argument. The Samaritan woman is saying that you say that we have to come and worship in Jerusalem. We can do it in Samaria. The headquarters of the northern kingdom. And Christ says that, okay, you know what? Now the fulfillment has come. So it doesn't matter, you worshiping there or here. All you need to do is worship in truth and spirit. But in this particular time, you now realize the challenge. You could not set up another altar anywhere. It will lead to idolatry.
And in fact, the mention of verse number 7 about the sacrificing to demons. I checked and I saw in one of the commentaries that the term demon here is the same term that is translated Hazazel.
All right.
Just in chapter 16, the same term.
Satan.
It's Satan. So, and it says, they shall no more offer their sacrifices to demons, to Satans. Meaning it was a practice. These children of Israel, they used to sacrifice to demons because they're coming from Egypt. And so I see God who is now straightening the crooked path in terms of worship, making them straight. I see a God who is introducing the laws that govern worship and teaching the true forms of worship. Vis-a-vis the practices that they were used for the pagans' worship and even demon worship.
That's Pastor.
Well, thank you. They have put it, they have clarified well. The Lord was concerned with verse 3 as it says, the ox, the lamb, or goat because it was used for the sacrifice. And so he needed to rein in on this because it was what's used for sacrifice. So that the picture will come out well. The picture will come out because if everybody offered, a lamb or a goat or any other thing, I was doing that because I was able to see the rest of the chapter. It will give an allowance for the other animals. But these animals, when you will see them, the first thing that will come in your mind is sacrifice to the Lord.
Right.
So now when it's sacrificed all over,
Yes.
it will not bring the picture that God wanted it to come. That when you look at this, you see them as animals that can be offered to God. But now when you haphazardly are able to slaughter them here and there, it may lose meaning. Again, there was an implication that people were being too clever. Because when you sacrifice, you don't, it's not necessarily, you're not saying what you're doing. So you may be seated, or you may be here on somebody's altar, and that person is doing his own things. He is offering to other gods.
Wow.
In your mind, you may be thinking it is to God. But in real sense, he's offering, like, these people are just from Egypt. The Osiris, we talked about the Osiris, who was the blood of the Nile. That's what they regarded. They had their gods whom they used to sacrifice to. So somebody will even willingly sacrifice, but because all of you assume all sacrifices to God, kumbe, he's sacrificing to what? To the demons. And so to put things right, if everything is sacrificed at the tabernacle, then it becomes right. And so I think what God was doing was writing a loophole. Let me say, he was sealing a loophole that can be used for someone to pretend that it's basically sacrifice is sacrifice, but in real sense, he's not sacrificing to God, he's sacrificing to the demons.
Pastor, am I also thinking of another extreme? The sacrifices were meant to be offered so that they can atone for sin.
Yes.
It was a humiliating exercise. So unique, imagine with me, if you are staying at the back of the tent. This was a huge camp. So the
Miles
tents
and
are
miles.
spread miles and miles backwards from the sanctuary, which is somewhere in the center. So you are dragging a goat to the tabernacle to offer sacrifice. Do you know how humiliating that is? So I'm seeing another aspect here being saved. The real meaning of worship, the real meaning of gaining penitence, being forgiven. It is a humiliating thing. So you cannot purport that, okay, yes, I sinned, but at the backyard of your of your tent, you can be done with this
You've
business.
done it easily.
Right here. This extreme is taken to another side, another pole in the time of Christ. When he comes and finds, guys are no longer, what they do? They send their servants before them with the goat. Get the goat at the tabernacle. Tukutane huko, let's meet there. Others now, they were selling,
Yes.
They were being sold right there. So you come and tell the seller,
Instead of carrying it,
that
you
altar, take that goat there. It's mine. So you are not associated at all with the sin that you have done. You've done. Sin was meant to be humiliating. You don't want to go back to it again. So this convenience and cover-ups. So a lot of sugar coating.
Yes.
Of the sin which is meant, which you don't want to repeat again because of what it takes you through. Right.
I want also to come in and say the reason why from now henceforth the sacrifice must be brought to the tabernacle is because of the significance of the priest.
All right.
When we go to the book of Hebrews, then we know Christ is our high priest. No, you cannot atone for your sin. You needed a high priest to stand in place to atone for your sin. And so what we are dealing with in the Old Testament get fulfillment in the New Testament. And the lambs and the high priest find their antitype in who? In Christ. So then there could be no any other way of forgiveness of the children of Israel's sins after God has taught this, apart from any sinner presenting himself also before the priest and handing over the lamb of sacrifice to the priest so that the priest can atone on their behalf because he stood in the place of Christ.
Okay. And, again, as you look at verse 8? Yeah. Also, you shall say to them, whatever man of the house of Israel or of the strangers who dwell among you who offers a burnt offering or sacrifice and does not bring it to the door of the tabernacle of meeting to offer it to the Lord, that man shall be cut off from among his people. And before we even get to verse 10, if you did worship any other idols or these demons, you are supposed to be like excommunicated from the camp.
It's not even worshipping other idols. If you don't follow the prescribed way of offering, because it again, let me say again, as Pastor Dan used to say, it is not arbitrary. Why are we sacrificing? Why has God raised a priest? Why the lamb? Why pouring of the blood? Because all these things were pointing to who? Jesus Christ. So if you look at verse number 9, and I thank God for this verse number 9, this man who does not bring it to the door of the tabernacle of the meeting. When you bring to the door of the tabernacle, the next thing you're doing, you're presenting it to the priest.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the point here. So if you don't bring it to the door of the tabernacle, it means you're not bringing it to the priest. And so whatever you're doing there, you are not atoning for your sin. In fact, if it is ignorance, then you live with your sins without being atoned. There's no hope. If you know the need for you to bring to the priest, then you are a rebellious person. And God will not entertain rebellion in the camp. And that's why he says, and because they were taught, they knew the significance of the priest. So if you don't bring it to the temple, then it means you are rebellious, and that rebellion must be removed. Hence, he says that man should be cut off from among the people.
God is saving us from the sin of syncretism.
Yeah.
And this is a common practice today. Syncretism is the common practice where, I'm from Kisii. So I get elements of my culture which are hard to let go of, right? And you find them infused in our worship. And there are a lot of beautiful things in our culture that are okay. But then a lot of them lead to superstition. And there are a number of, let me call them not in a demeaning way, cults, which are especially, the native ones, which are actually a lot of syncretism there. So these guys, there is the practice they have been having. You're not just going to carry it over into the worship of the true living God. So God once again is saying that, you know what? You want to worship me, you do it on my own terms. Otherwise, don't claim that you're worshiping me. Usiseme, you do your own things. And I think...
and if you do, you want to insist on your own thing, not here,
You
somewhere
cut off.
else.
not here, look for...
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now let's take a short break on our discussion today, and we'll be back shortly to continue with the same discussion. Welcome back to this discussion, the Bible journey, the Holiness season, the book of Leviticus, chapter 17. And now we want to advance to us from verse 10 and look at some other issues here, just still on the sanctity of blood. But still, pastors, I think you had something to express about the stranger.
Hey, Pastor John.
Okay.
Well, I was hoping I will talk about the stranger. My father is a very nice guy. That's how we'll call him.
My father too.
Yes, I don't know about your father, but he's very stern on one thing.
Right.
When it's time for devotion, whether you are an adult or not, as long as you're in his house, it means worship. He always says, "Bora mko kwangu, you will do worship." When you go to your place, if you're not comfortable with the time of worship, then you'll be what. So my father has taught me that, worship, as long as you're here, you do it my way. That's why I began by saying he's a very nice person, because his timings versus our timings are not the same. He wants to do worship at 6 so that he can leave, and whereas for me, I want to do my worship at 8. Because that is when I will have fully woken up with my children and something like that. So the Lord was saying, including the stranger, when you come over, I wanted to add on his syncretism and something called dual allegiance. You cannot say, because let me also offer a burnt offering that looks like yours, but meanwhile, I'll be offering about mine. He wanted categorically that even the stranger, as long as you're here, you're in the presence of the Lord. The tabernacle is there. That is the presence of the Lord. You offer sacrifice to that God in the way that it pleases that God, the God of heaven. That is why, like, we were reading through it, and it will say, like the Sabbath, for example, verse 9, chapter 20, verse 9, even including your stranger is to rest on the Sabbath. When it was about the tabernacle, again, even when a stranger comes to pray, he is considered as someone who's come before the Lord. The Lord basically will not give you an excuse to do what you want because you are of another tribe, which informs me about God. What God is talking about is not the religion, like dictionary say. Saturday is the day for Jews and Sunday for Christians. You know, that's how it says. That cannot be God. If it was God only has one, is worship for God, whether you're a stranger, an Israelite, including the Egyptians who had followed the Israelites. It did not matter. They were to worship. If they will not worship the way God had prescribed, as in verse 8 and verse 9, the solution was still the same: cast them out. Yes.
So the issue of many ways to God,
No.
nothing like that. There's only
Just
one
one
way,
way.
the Son Jesus Christ.
Maybe I will come in on that point and say a few things here. Number one, it is the believer to influence the heathen, not the heathen to influence the believer. It is the heathen to give way.
Directions.
For the Christian, for the believer, to influence him, not the Christian giving way to accommodate the heathen. You know, we are in that temptation many times where we need to accommodate the unbelieving person by giving our way of belief to make them comfortable. But God says, no. He is a stranger. He is not conversant with it. These are very strange things. They may make him very uncomfortable, but he must. Because the reason why I raised you as a nation was for one purpose, that I may use you to bring all other nations to know me. You are the light, you are the salt. Then number two, I'm looking at the concept of the strangers, because I think it has been repeated several times, and we'll be seeing that as Pastor John was talking about, even giving the 10 Commandments, that there is no one who is a stranger before God. Even us, even the children of Israel, there's a time when they would call themselves strangers. There's a time when the things of God were strange to them. It takes God to introduce somebody to the strange things that they can become familiar with them. So the people who are called strangers, they are brought into our homes that we may expose them to the strange things of God, that they can become familiar with those things of God. So to me, it is an aspect of evangelism. He's saying, as I'm raising you, and I'm raising you that you can become instrument to reach out to other people.
And whatever man of the house of Israel or of the strangers who dwell among you who eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood, and will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that makes atonement for the soul. Therefore I said to the children of Israel, no one among you shall eat blood, nor shall any stranger who dwells among you eat blood.
The same thing Pastor Nyaga has said, but I want also to echo it in terms of, this looks more like a threat, according to me. When God says, I will set my face against that person, look at exactly what God is saying. I will not tolerate even a stranger breaking my own commandments. I always see it practically when people come, like your relatives or your siblings, yes. They come and visit you, and they hear say, you guys go to church, maybe I'll just be here. and you think like, because I don't want to impose my religion on them, then it's okay. This is God saying he will not tolerate that kind of an action even from a stranger. We have tried to explain it again in terms of God says it's not about the humanity, it's not about human beings to decide when blood becomes life, whether you're a stranger or not. The fact will always remain life. The life of an animal, the life of a human being is in its blood. Blood contains life. So that does not matter whether you're young or old, whether you're an animal. We read about it where an animal, if an animal killed a human being, it was also supposed to be killed also.
Right.
Because even an animal was not allowed to take the life of a human being again. So you can imagine if even an animal is not allowed to take the life, how much more even another person, another human being being allowed. So from verse 10 to verse 12, according to me, it's about be wary that even the stranger observes the commandments of God, especially concerning life. God is the creator of the animal. God is the creator of the human being, the Israelite. He's also the creator of the stranger. All of them are united by God. So therefore, do not touch blood because it's life.
And he's so categorical, you shall not touch it, that blood. I have given it only to make atonement for you.
Right here. It is the degree of disassociation that you need to practice. We're talking about the sanctity of blood here. And this goes on, the emphasis is so much, you go until verse 14, where it's mixing consequences and reminders. Right from verse 10, it's the same thing to 14. It reminds you, it tells you if you do it, it reminds you, and it tells you it's a big deal. See, the people of the nations around Israel, even in Egypt, there was a common practice of drinking blood, as in intentionally.
Which is even there today.
Even today, somebody wants to be fierce, like a lion. Yeah, guys will go drinking blood of animals so that they can partake of the characteristics of the animal. Maybe a sportsman wants to be speedier. So you go, you look for a what? Right, yeah, or powerful. Yeah, that is true. That was, even today, guys actually literally drink blood, right? Nay, not even blood. I have seen guys taking a live heart
And eating it.
of an animal so that you can partake of the fear, the fierceness or the speed, or if it was a very serious jogo, cockerel, and you're like, so. And, it is very sad. God is prohibiting all these things, saying that you do not get your life from the blood, you get your life from me. Your strength, your sustenance, and all that. But then there's another obvious health reason. Infections. People drinking blood. You are partaking of whatever baggage
Everything.
is in that blood. You carry it yourself. And then I'm thinking of, I think it's Pastor, you spoke about this, the symbolism of blood in sacrifice. You cannot cheapen it.
Yes.
So people taking blood all over, and yet this is the same blood. Actually, there's a way Paul rephrases the text that you just read in Hebrews 9, verse 22. He says that without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. And then guys are all over drinking blood. Come on.
It has to be
Right,
serious.
yeah. So you want to maintain its uniqueness, and when something is rare, then
It has more value.
It has more value. Right.
Pastor Nyaga, and I would want to...
Of course, verse number 13.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to read 13 and 14. Whatever man of the children of Israel or of the stranger who dwells among you, who hunts and catches any animal or bird that may be eaten, he shall pour out its blood and cover it with dust. For it is the life of all flesh. Its blood sustains its life. Therefore I say to the children of Israel, you shall not eat the blood of any flesh, for the lives of all flesh is its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off.
Yeah, I wanted to talk on that verse. Whatever man of the children of Israel or of the strangers who dwell among you, who hunts and catches any animal or bird that may be eaten. At that point, God has allowed animals to be eaten. He has allowed people to eat meat. Of course, we had discussed this in the previous
Chapter 11.
chapter 11. But now he comes and says, he shall pour out his blood and cover it with dust. The question is, how much blood are you able to drain from an animal? If you cut its head and you pour the blood on the soil, how much of that animal's blood have you drained? So that we also look at the significance of pouring the blood, so that we don't confuse that, because I've seen this happen when I was growing. When people, because out of these verses here and others that we're going to read, that they would wash the blood from a meat of an animal that they want to cook 7 times. Of course, there are instructions in the Bible. And squeeze it until when you squeeze it, you cannot see any trace of blood. It's like a tissue now. And then you cook that tissue to eat. Then now you wonder, no, what are you eating in it? What are you eating? So those are extremes of interpretations. I think to me, even when I look at verse 13 only, it tells me that there is symbolism or significance of pouring the blood, not necessarily not eating the blood. But before you eat the blood, you need to pour the blood. When
But
it comes
the
to the book
instruction,
of,
Pastor, is you shall not eat the blood.
that's what I'm asking you.
And
How
you
much?
said about the instruction of to wash, even in the scriptures, wash the animal and, cook and cook.
We're in this verse, verse 13. Whatever man of the children of Israel or of the strangers who dwell among you who hunts and catches any animal or bird that may be eaten, okay? He shall pour out its blood and cover it with dust. Now, when we come to Deuteronomy chapter 12,
Okay.
Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 16. Let's start 15. However, you may slaughter and eat meat within all your gates. Okay? Whatever your heart desires, according to the blessings of the Lord your God, which he has given you. The unclean and the clean may eat. The unclean may eat of it, of the gazelle, of the deer alike. Only you shall not eat the blood. Are you there? You shall pour it on the earth like water. You may not eat, okay, just that. So it means when you cut the head or the neck of an animal, when you slaughter an animal, you should not drink that blood. One of the reasons, maybe I've not mentioned since we started these discussions, and why God is instructing on the pouring of the blood as a means of atonement and a sacrifice, is because it was a practice of pagans to do the atonement and sacrifice by drinking the blood. And I think this needs to come very, very clear. And you know, when you look at the backgrounds of the text that we're dealing with, you appreciate so many things, because again, I'm saying the culture of these people, the practice of these people, the pagan that encompassed around the children of Israel were informing God so much on establishing a religious practice that is not the same as the similar to that of the pagans. Is creating a distinct pattern of worship. So that which they used to do, he could do it differently, so that they don't worship him in the very way that pagans are being worshipped. So the reason of pouring the blood, one of the reasons, is that the pagans would sacrifice and do atonement by drinking the blood. But also, Christ was to pour his blood. He was to be killed on the cross, and the blood would be poured. So the significance of pouring the blood, symbolically representing the losing of the blood, not enjoying the blood for food, because Christ was not to be enjoyed for food, but it was a painful sacrifice. It was a loss. You value this blood as food, you want to eat it, but I want to look at it as you drain it down, and actually says cover it with the soil. Is a loss to you. So this is what is happening here. Of course, we will advance and find a few other verses where God instructs on washing them 7 times. And we will be talking more of disease issues, health issues in these things.
Okay, Pastor Abuya.
Just very briefly, I want to talk on verse 14. Just to add on this thought. Later on, we find David. David sends his men of valor, strong men. You know, they were out fighting, and he's very thirsty. And these guys fight through, literally go to the front lines. They fight through the enemy camp, get a drink of water from the well. I've forgotten which well. They bring to David, and David is like, no, I can't drink this. So he pours it out as a sacrifice. He's like, okay, you know what? This is bloody water. The men sacrificed their life for me to have it. Just talking about the significance of pouring out. And verse 14, the emphasis continues. You know that it is, okay, why? It is the life of the flesh, of all flesh. He says why you should cover it with dust. It is blood sustains its life. Therefore I say to the children of Israel, you shall not eat the blood of any flesh, for the life of all flesh is its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off. The children of Israel actually took this very, very seriously. Until later on, you remember, in the book of John, chapter 6, I want us to read this. John 6, 53 to 56. There are some jokes you don't make from the pulpit, you know?
Yeah.
And I think Jesus kind of went a little bit too far, according to them. Huh?
John 6.
53.
53.
Right.
Then Jesus said to them, most assuredly I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day. For my flesh is food indeed, and my blood is drink indeed.
56.
He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me, and I in him.
Can you imagine? Jesus is speaking to Jews. They're like, what? What do you mean? We have an express instruction that you cannot drink blood. Jesus here is telling them the only way you live is by drinking my blood and eating my flesh. This guy is not serious. Actually, if you continued forward with that text, it says many of his disciples turned away from him. He had many disciples, 12 remained. Of course, he had gathered also the special ones. But at this stage, there are many disciples. When he said these guys were like, this guy cannot be real. Remember, the life of the animal is in its blood, and you cannot drink blood. We are clear. Moses ordered us this, forgetting that actually all that Moses was telling them is because it was pointing to
Christ.
him.
He's the
and
life.
he's now here.
Yes,
He's now here. So this is the most other important thing. Huh? The blood was foreshadowing. It was pointing to Christ's blood. It was the real blood. Hebrews 9 talks about that in 10. It was the real blood that it was talking about. Huh? So, eating it, drinking it, belittling it, making it trivial, like for food.
But again, on the same concept that I had spoken, they were drinking and eating from the pagan practice, believing that the eating of the blood of the animals and drinking of the blood of the animals was giving them life.
True.
Yet what they didn't know is that the life is in Christ. And now he comes in. He says, if you eat me and you drink my blood, because I am the life. I am the life.
I have life in me.
Yes, in verse 15, Pastor Kabira, and every person who eats what died naturally or what was torn by beasts, whether it is a native of your own country or a stranger, he shall both wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Then he shall be clean. But if he does not wash them or bathe his body, then he shall bear his guilt.
Well, thank you. As I add on to it,
Yes.
Dust shall return to dust. Why it was about covering dust? It's life.
All right.
Then, secondly, it's maybe we should not think about pouring of blood as libation. Someone, a viewer may think of is, it's just a
It was
little.
done a lot, especially in the African tradition.
Yes, it's not the same with the libation, which was to please ancestors. This one was for a different reason. It's pour all the blood for the sake of That is life. Now, when we get to verse 15 and 16, a practical reason. You do not know why an animal has died. You have no idea why it's died.
Right.
You don't know which animal tore up another beast in pieces. You go ahead and begin eating from it. That will, you exposing yourself to a lot of things. And that is why God knew and said, you will be unclean till the evening, bathe in water, wash yourself, because you've exposed yourself to uncleanness. Because this killing from verse 1 to 7 that we're talking about was best done in the temple. And so for another person or another reason to kill this animal happens to come along, then it will make it unclean, exactly what we were discussing about. So in the end, I just want to maybe dwell on the part that it was not practical. It is still not practical even today. I know where, what are they called? Meat inspectors. I don't know if it's meat inspectors or who have to stamp, you know.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't know why, but
Public health officer.
yeah, the public health officer stamps an animal to show that it was slaughtered right, and it was slaughtered in the right conditions, and what have you. If today they still do that, how much more of an animal that was killed or slaughtered when you do not have a clue where it's coming from?
All the time you're having
And
news.
that's why
But
we
again,
remain
but
unclean.
again, another
Yes.
stronger reason why it was prohibited for one to eat an animal which naturally died is the very reason that this animal was not able to pour the blood. If an animal falls down and dies, if you wake in the morning, you meet your goat is dead, then you go and eating it. You didn't have an opportunity of letting the blood. And if it died, even though you cut it, the blood may not ooze out.
Right, right, yeah.
So, and God is emphasizing on this. Don't eat the blood. Because and he says, he gives the reason, life is in the blood.
In the blood.
And life is Christ. Life is in Christ. So at this particular time, they are not allowed to consume Christ. You cannot eat the life of a God to give you life, and then you live in sin, because this God is not able to atone for you completely. But when Christ has come, then you can consume of him. And so an animal that has not laid its blood, I remember when I was growing, I could see my mom and my dad, if a chicken is about to die, they would quickly get it and cut its head and then pour the blood and they'd eat. And they would explain things they could not understand. And so when I started searching the scriptures, and then I could see,
Right,
they had some glimpses of, the teachings of the one of God.
Leviticus.
Yeah,
Wow.
the Leviticus of yeah.
So we cannot actually eat of blood because the life of the animal is in its blood. That's what is being
Jesus
said
says,
here.
I'm the resurrection and life.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we come to the end of our discussion today. We hope to see you or to meet you next time as we continue with our discussion on this show, The Bible Journey, remembering that this is the Holiness season. Share with us your comments, your views, and your questions on our social media platforms indicated at the bottom of your screen. God bless you.